visit.
Okay. I'll buy you one for Christmas.
Okay, fair enough. I'll look forward to it. So I understand from Jacob, the medical student you spoke with, that while you're still certainly not back to where we ultimately want you to be, but that you're in a much better place than you were when you left the hospital. Is that right?
I would say I've made some progress, yes. When
And
I
the,
left, yeah, when I left the hospital, there was so much pain going on that I feel like it did have to do with the cancer
yeah,
that uh, they couldn't even stand up or sit me in a wheelchair without me sweating and vomiting when I was
yeah,
here at physical therapy the first time. And they were trying to figure it out because they knew it was much more than hip replacement that was going on. And I just had a lot of pain, a lot of burning, and I would sweat and vomit. So that is not going on. I can sit in a wheelchair. I can't walk too much. I get a lot of weakness that I'm surprised because normally I do have a lot of strength. And so my PT is still going very slow.
Is it true, though, from what I understand, the abdominal pain is significantly less than it was 2 weeks ago? You're,
Absolutely.
you're requiring significantly less pain medication, and
Absolutely.
while the improvement in your mobility is lagging behind that, it
Right.
is starting to improve now that your pain is better and you're able to be up and do more. Is that all
Oh,
true?
absolutely. No, I can sit in a wheelchair for long periods. I can walk from the door to the bed. There are certain things that I could do that, as much as I willed to do it and I wanted to do it, I could not do it because the pain would get me nauseous and everything else. So yeah, no, there's been some very good progress. I feel like my bowels are moving regularly.
Good.
I still have some digestive issues about, and I'm trying to figure out, is it what I eat? You know what I mean? I'm just trying to figure that out because
Sure.
I do get concerned every meal. I just wish that there was just a pill or a drink, and I do have, you know what I mean? I just worry about every food that I eat. So,
Yeah. Well, I think now. Sorry, let me ask one other question, logistical question. So, are you set up to get your next dose of the immunotherapy there locally or not?
today,
Yeah, okay, but I just want to be clear. You've got an appointment and a way to get over to the chemo suite, and that stuff's all worked out.
yeah, my daughter-in-law right there is gonna just wheel me. It's right across the street, so everything's local. But
Okay.
we didn't have any blood work done.
My guess is they'll just do it there. Most chemotherapy suites, you arrive, they do the blood work, you wait for an hour, the blood work comes back, and then you get your infusions. My guess is that's what they'll do.
Yeah, I think that's the plan.
Yeah. So I think, overall, uh, in Spanish, they say adentro de lo que cabe, which means within what fits. I think within what fits, this is all very good news, right? I mean, I wish that you had just, you were out running 3 miles a day or something.
Amen.
But I
Amen.
think for as sick as you were when I saw you in the hospital a month ago or whatever it was, all of the things that you're describing, the decrease in the pain, the decrease in the need for pain medications, the increase in your mobility, the increased energy, the normalized bowel movements, all of that stuff, you know, I never want to count any chickens early, but it is overwhelmingly likely that those are all good signs and that those indicate that the chemotherapy is working, or the immunotherapy rather. What we sometimes see with the colon cancers that are driven by the kind of mutation that we talked about that your cancer has is that they just really don't care very much about our old fashioned chemotherapy drugs that are the sort of tried and true standards for colon cancer, but they are sometimes exquisitely sensitive to treatment with immunotherapy drugs. It's really very unusual. It does happen occasionally, but it's very unusual for a person's cancer to grow through, to not only come back, but then to grow through the chemotherapy that you're getting after the surgery, right? So you were getting your chemotherapy, you had your surgery, you're getting your chemotherapy, and then the tumors grew in spite of that. That's really quite unusual because even tumors that are eventually going to grow back usually at least wait until you've finished that adjuvant chemotherapy. So the fact that it grew through that was unusual, but what the picture that I'm getting from everything you're describing is that it sounds like the immunotherapy is working just great. Um, I think your biggest challenge over the next few weeks is going to be to strike just the right balance where on the one hand, you don't want to push so hard that you take a fall, or something else happens where you set, it's 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. But on the other hand, you do want to give your body as much of a chance as possible to regain its strength. So, and in general, sitting in a chair is better than being in bed. And walking, even if it's just a few steps to the bathroom or the window or what have you, walking is better than being in a chair. So the 2 biggest things that you'll really be working on are going to be mobility and nutrition. And to the degree that you can focus on those things, those are the things that are the most likely to ally with your therapy that you're getting to keep getting you further and further back on your feet.
Very cool.
All right.
When it comes to nutrition, doctor, are there diets and specific foods? I mean, do you know there's any research we can do on that?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is not to go on a diet. So what you should do is just all the stuff that your mom would tell you to do, right? So lean proteins, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and ice cream. Those are the things that you should do. Okay? So, I mean, in general, you want to have a healthy diet. The bigger thing for most people is just getting the calories that they need. But one nice thing about being in a skilled nursing facility is that hopefully they can help you a little bit of, close track on what you're eating. The main thing is just to know that as your body is breaking down cancer cells, you need to make sure that you're giving your body enough calories to rebuild. This is actually not as much of an issue really with immunotherapy as it is with chemotherapy, but nonetheless, you just need to make sure that your body has enough calories and enough nutrients to be rebuilding things that have been broken down while the cancer has been advancing. Mm-hmm. And so, people as they get older sometimes start to eat less naturally anyway. And then if you're in a state with cancer, the way that cancer affects your body, you can start eating even less than that. And so the biggest thing is just eating enough. And so that's to say that, as much as we'd love for you to eat whole grain bread, if you're going to eat twice as much white bread as whole grain bread, then you should eat the white bread. Because for right now, the number of calories probably matters more than the
type.
Than the type. Obviously, again, within reason, and we'd like it to be healthy. But honest to goodness, if milkshakes float your boat, then whoever's there close to you should bring you milkshakes sometimes. Mm-hmm. Those are actually a pretty efficient way to get calories. So.
Yeah. Good. Did have a couple questions. When there were 10 sessions that were set up, and we're wondering, is it like 10 and done, or is it 10 and okay?
That's just a bookkeeping thing.
Okay.
It's the therapy. Now, that's really the way to think about it is right now you're on chemo, and we'll discuss what you're going to do in 3 months and 3 months. But there's nothing magic about 10 slots. That's just how they do.
Okay. And then being that she hasn't had any side effects that we're aware of after this first session, does that mean the likelihood of side effects going forward, she shouldn't see any, or is this just like the chemo kind of might build and something might materialize?
Yeah, so it's a funny thing. It's different from chemotherapy. So, chemotherapy, as much as I hate to admit this as a person who gives chemotherapy for a living, normal chemotherapy is really amounts to more or less carefully controlled poison, mm-hmm. right? We give you poisonous compounds in hopes that they poison the cancer cells more than your normal cells, and that your cancer cells will go away entirely and your normal cells will recover. That's kind of how chemo works.
Yeah.
The immunotherapy is not like that. And the reason it matters in answering your question is because chemotherapy is like that, the side effects do tend to sort of accumulate, and it's also true that the side effects you're going to get tend to more or less be the side effects you get with the first cycle. At least the first cycle gives you a good idea of what's going to happen later on. Immunotherapy is not really like that, though, in 2 important ways. One is that many people really don't have much in the way of side effects with immunotherapy, at least initially, because it's not poisoning your cells in the same way that chemotherapy is. However, it is also true that immunotherapy strengthens the immune system. And of course, that's the whole point, is to strengthen the immune system so that it can fight against the cancer cells. But it is also true that it's strengthening the immune system in such a way that the immune system can attack your own normal healthy cells.
Yep.
And so side effects of immunotherapy can include what's called an autoimmune, or your immune system attacking your own body, can include an autoimmune attack on any part of your body.
Mm-hmm.
And when those things develop, they actually tend to develop usually somewhere later on in the course of therapy, not right away.
Okay.
Now, to be clear, a lot of people are able to go through therapy and never really have an issue with it, or they have a mild issue that's not a big deal, and we deal with it and it's fine, and they go on their merry way. Some people, even who have more serious autoimmune side effects, we then start them on a steroid medicine, and with the steroid medicine, it tamps things down, and then they go on to do okay. There are some people, in candor, who the autoimmune side effects can be devastating. Sometimes they mean we have to stop the therapy, and in rare cases, they could even be life-threatening. That's not very common with this medication, but it does happen. So all of that is to say that, on the one hand, I would not expect you to get your second dose and then, oh my gosh, you have terrible nausea or whatever, that stuff. That would be much less common than with chemo, but we're going to have to continue to be vigilant, and any side effects that you notice creeping up, it's important to talk with us and your other doctors about them, because they do need to be investigated, because as I said, the immune system can attack any organ in the body.
Okay. Fantastic.
Are there any specific organs that it's more likely to go after, or any other, what kind of things?
I mean, there are certainly things that we see more of than other things. So, I mean, some of the most common things we'll see are, it can still go after the GI system. So you can have something that kind of looks like the side effects of normal chemotherapy, but it's just caused, instead of poisoning the GI system, it's the immune system attacking the GI system. So we see that. We see it affect the liver. We see it affect the lungs. But the truth is that if you do this for long enough, you'll see just about everything. And I've seen it attack individual nerves in weird ways, so that a person presents with what would otherwise maybe look like a stroke, but there's no stroke. It's actually the immune system that, for whatever reason, decided to attack exactly those nerves. Anyway, I'm not going to give you a long list to keep you up at night. There's lots of different stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
But many people don't have big issues. That's also important.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the really serious side effects tend to come more, not exclusively, but they tend to come more when you start mixing immunotherapy drugs, more than one, with each other. That's where you tend to see more problems. When you're just giving one, many people do fine.
Okay.
That's a good segue to the next question then, because I don't know if you know this, but my mom is a professional self-prognosticator, and so spends way too much time researching and YouTubing and everything else. So she's she had asked you before and about Fen-Ben and CBD. She still wants to try to do the Fen-Ben at some point, and our mention to her was we wanted to talk to you to make sure that would not be like you're saying, that it wouldn't compound on top of the immunotherapy or make it ineffective or less effective or have anything to do with that.
Remind me, what's Fen-Ben?
It's do you remember the name of the technical name on?
Fenbendazole.
Oh, fenbendazole.
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of CBD, the thing that I would say about that is that what I usually tell so there are two reasons people take CBD products in my experience. Well, three reasons. One is because they want to, they're a teenager and like smoking. The second one is because they feel like it's going to help with side effects, and the third one is that they feel like it's going to improve the effects of the therapy that they're on. I would not recommend going out with the high school seniors and smoking it. So the third category, in terms of controlling, or in terms of trying to make the therapy more effective, if you're doing it for that reason, I just wouldn't. Because you just don't have any evidence, well, really with anything, but particularly with immunotherapy, I am aware of no convincing evidence that says that it makes immunotherapy more effective. Now, if you look long enough on the internet, I mean, if you Google CBD effectiveness cancer, you'll get 9 million articles from 9 million unreputable sources saying that, oh, my grandpa got it and he was cured, and the da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and somebody at some university did an experiment that showed that something. But to use the president's phrase, most of that is just malarkey. The thing is that I have no doubt that there are people who have gotten CBD or mebendazole or any of these things and done well, but that's meaningless in the landscape of cancer treatment, because the medicine that you're getting, the only reason that you're getting it is because it's been through this enormously rigorous, super expensive set of trials and it has to, hit all of its marks to show that it's effective. And it's done that. And so that's the reason that you're getting it. And CBD and mebendazole and all of those others just haven't done that. And so we don't know if they're effective, and it's always possible that they have side effects. Now, to happen with those two things, we don't tend to think of the side effects as being super problematic, although the mebendazole, I end up thinking about it exactly. But anyway, so I would not combine them to try to make the immunotherapy more effective, because they don't know that we do that. Now, the last question is about using CBD products for symptoms. Occasionally, we'll have a person who says, oh, I just have the worst nausea, and, I've tried, all the medicines that you've given me and this and that and the other, and nothing has worked. Can I try CBD? And if that happens, then sometimes I'll say, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead, see if it works. Now, I will tell you that most of the time when people do that, the impression that I get is that it's kind of, maybe it helped. I'm not really sure. It's really pretty unusual for me to hear, even in that scenario, for somebody to come back and say, wow, I tried it, and that was the silver bullet that really solved the problem. So all of that is to say that, and I can't remember if I told you this before, but there was actually, just to further emphasize this point, there was a study in breast cancer that they did a number of years ago where they were looking at the effectiveness of some chemotherapy drugs after surgery for breast cancer to see if, combination A did better than combination B in curing people with breast cancer. But then after the study was over, they had done all these questionnaires with the study. They went back to the questionnaires and they just divided everybody into two groups. Those who took any form of alternative therapies at the time that they took their chemo, anything more than just a multivitamin, and those who took no forms of alternative therapy during their chemotherapy. The people who took no other alternative therapies except for their chemo and a multivitamin and stuff that was prescribed by their doctor, people who took no form of alternative therapy had a statistically significantly higher likelihood of being cured of their cancer than the people who took any other form of alternative therapy. That doesn't mean that alternative therapies are necessarily bad. It's just that we don't have a lot of information about them. We don't know how well they mix with the chemo. We don't know if they're safe. We don't know if they're effective. It's just sort of the Wild West, right? There's no regulation about any of those things.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult to determine their safety.
Okay.
So I recommend against it shortly.
Okay, thank you. And last one, she had asked about the CEA test, and at what point is that done typically, or is it even done in the process here?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly reasonable to do the CEA test. I will tell you that, so the way that we usually think about it is that we usually look at three things for determining how treatment is going, whether it's effective basically or not. And those three things are blood tests when they're relevant, how you feel, and what your scans show. Now, one thing is that we checked your CEA on the 2nd of April, and it was totally normal, which is to say that in your case, it's probably not useful. So in your case, instead of looking at three things, we're really going to be looking at two things, which are how you feel, and then eventually what a scan shows.
Yeah, okay. And I think the scan's like first week of July-ish or so, somewhere around there, we're thinking, so.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, good.
So
If you were... Oh, go ahead.
Our hope is that this immunotherapy is going to get to the roots of everywhere else that the cancer has spread throughout my body.
Yes, most often if a therapy, whether chemo or immunotherapy, most often if it works somewhere, it works everywhere. There are exceptions to that rule, but generally it either works or it doesn't. It's unusual, not unheard of, but it's unusual for it to work in some places and not work in other places.
Great.
Okay, so that tumor or whatever it was that's showing up in my stomach through the scans, and seeing where that burned, I mean, that is a common feeling for someone that has cancer in there to have such a burn, and it was very hot. My skin was very hot on the outside. It was burn on the end, and hot.
Yeah,
And the
I
back,
mean,
too.
it's a little bit hard to say. You know, it's very common for us to have people who come in and, you know, say, oh, I had this pain in this place for 3 or 4 hours, and what was that, and what happened? And honestly, if it comes and goes away on its own, we're kind of left shrugging our shoulders because it's almost impossible to evaluate something that disappeared on its own. But the good news is that if it disappeared on its own, we very likely don't need to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if
Yeah,
it comes
but
back and
do we think there's a chance that the immunotherapy had already worked on that?
yeah, I mean, well, the thing that I'm more convinced about is that the consistent, persistent gnawing pain that you were having when you were in the hospital that has gotten significantly better, I'm pretty well convinced that improvement is because of the immunotherapy. The pain that you had that came for a couple hours and then went away on its own, honestly, I'm not convinced that has anything to do with the cancer or the.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One more question. I
Yeah.
think I've asked this before, but only because I don't understand it. That P53 gene that I have, can you tell me, is there something unusual? I mean, I know from that, like, only 5% people have the type of colon cancer that I have. That's what I was told.
Yeah, well, right. So the truth is that every cancer is quite literally genetically as unique as the person who has it, because your cancer grew from a mutated version of your own DNA, which is unique, unless you have an identical twin. And even then it's unique by now. So your cancer is unique, but there are different ways of talking about what defines your cancer. The P53 mutation is actually not a particularly uncommon mutation. It's seen across all different kinds of cancers. It's a very common mutation that's involved in the formation of lots of different kinds of tumors. But the one that you're referring to that puts you in that 5%, or cite different percentages, but anyway, in that small category, is we talked about this before, but it's a big, ridiculous, long medical name, the microsatellite instability. And that's the thing that makes your tumor susceptible to the immunotherapy, which is relatively unusual. As I think I told you before, for 90-something% of patients with colon cancer, immunotherapy is totally useless. But for people who have this mutation, those are the rare people who get benefit.
Great.
All right?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much
good
for your
to talk to
time.
all you guys. We'll see you again soon.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks.
Okay, now, I just didn't know if he was gonna make a next